As you know, whānau, it's been a pretty rough few days for a lot of people in Dunedin. I want to go through some of the things that have happened in the last wee while, and we're tying this into the government's response to this, because see Lux, oh look, Chewy's taking his top off. It's getting serious now, folks. Oi, revving up. Because Luxon was in town today, and we want to talk about national and the national-led government's response to the floods and also to Dunedin Hospital. And I know this is very Dunedin-centric for a lot of you guys outside of it, but this is also emblematic of how they're operating in so many areas. Need we say more? Ferries? You know, so this is not just about Dunedin. This is about how national is leading this government. So we finished up a show here on Thursday night, and not long after that Thursday night, in fact, 12:39 in the AM Friday morning, Mayor Jules Radich had declared a state of emergency for Dunedin in response to heavy rainfall and flooding in the area. So basically, people would wake up on Friday morning and understand that Dunedin was in a state of emergency. Now, that state of emergency finished, I think, on Sunday morning, right? So what I found particularly interesting about how this government operates and runs the country is about 19 hours after that, the response from our Prime Minister was to tell the whole of the country that he was off to the Kiwi Indian Hall of Fame Awards in a PR exercise that I think couldn't have had any less sense around it, Chewy. So there's the Prime Minister. We're in a state of emergency in one part of our country. People are literally trying to bail out their houses. And one of the responses from this Prime Minister on this day was to, for some reason, stand like that, but to escalate and echo to the nation that that's what was on his mind whilst Dunedin was going through what it was going through. We're going to watch a clip at the moment when Mark Mitchell states in this clip, quote, "That's why we always turn up early." Mark Mitchell's going to say that in a clip we're about to see from the stand-up. That's why we always turn up early. Well, on Friday when the state of emergency was declared, the Prime Minister was at a gala dinner that evening. He didn't turn up. In fact, he turned up about 24 hours after the state of emergency finished. Let me play you this very short clip. It's only a minute long, and this is the Prime Minister being asked about something that was mooted by the council here. The council here mooted the idea we need a plan for the flooded, the areas of Dunedin that flood. We think the plan is to buy these houses out. Now, this is not based on this weekend's events. This is based on 2015's events and beyond. And last year, this government said, nah, not going to do that. We're not going to buy out those houses. And then we've got another flood. One of the difficulties is, I should have said last year, I think it was put in last year, it was decided this year. One of the difficulties is, of course, these guys didn't even know about that. And of course, if it's a difficult question, Luxon tends to run away and hand it off to Mark Mitchell. Listen out for that word, that sentence. We always turn up early, he's going to say.
Prime Minister, why did your government reject Dunedin City Council's proposal for funding to buy out homes in low-lying areas, in areas that have flooded here in South Dunedin?
I'll let Mark talk to that with respect to impacted properties and where we're working our way through that.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, we haven't had any requests at all in terms of dealing with those issues.
Because we're not talking about this weekend.
11 properties that have been red-stickered, primarily because of the slips, so it's not safe for people to be in them. Obviously, the council now will be doing work around whether or not there can be mitigation done to allow those people to return. But look, the reason why we're here and we always turn up early is because we want to partner with local government to make sure that people are looked after.
Sorry, to clarify.
Did you get that? Did you hear it, folks? Why we always turn up early? Should we play it again?
But look, the reason why we're here and we always turn up early is because we want to partner with...
I'll just say again. State of emergency, Luxon Gala. 24 hours after the state of emergency was finished, Luxon turns up to Dunedin for his photo op.
With local government to make sure that people are looked after.
Sorry, to clarify, this was before this flooding. Since the 2015 floods, last year Dunedin City Council put a proposal to government that this year was rejected, asking for money to buy out houses in low-lying areas.
I'd have to go back and check on the detail on that.
So, Chewy, last year the DCC said, as part of our plan, part of our climate mitigation plan, part of the issues we have is we need to these houses that are flood prone, we need to buy those up and central government needs to be involved. Central government said no, those houses are flooded again this time around. That's my first part of the conversation around flooding, Chewy. You're welcome to jump in now.
Yeah, so I want to link this back to something that they've been very keen to buzzword the shit out of when we talk about climate change, and that's climate mitigation.
Yeah.
Like we can't stop the climate from changing. We have to adapt. Now, for a lot of places around New Zealand, and you can look at Auckland, you can look at the East Coast, or all the places that were affected when that cyclone came through. Lots of people have built homes in stupid places. South Dunedin down here is built on an old tidal mudflat. There's houses that are built in valleys over old streams and all of that sort of stuff. And water will always remember where it used to be. Tough.
Yeah.
That's where your house is. So when we're talking about something like climate mitigation, what you are talking about is buying people's homes and giving them money to go and get a home somewhere else out of a danger zone. Here in Dunedin, South Dunedin is an incredibly dense housing area, and it's mainly older or poorer people.
Certainly poorer.
So that's why I was able to afford a house down there. So this is the sort of thing that this government that it seems real keen on climate mitigation should be well across.
Yep.
Well across. There's examples that's been talked about up in Auckland for houses that flooded very badly when their storm came through. And I also want to talking about Auckland's example, right? That wasn't this government at the wheel at that time. That was Labour. And you can go and look for yourself at the difference in reaction between these two governments. You can look at their crisis response. Look how different it is. When people say it doesn't matter who I vote for, they're all the fucking same. The proof is in the pudding here.
Yeah.
Luxon went to a gala. Okay, we're not privy to the discussions that may have happened between central government and local government. What do you need? Do you need us to come down? That sort of thing. But the optics,
Yeah,
putting on your suit and going to a gala event while Dunedin buckles down and wonder what the morning's going to bring, Luxon hasn't got the political instincts.
it's tone deaf.
He never has. He never has. And when the chance comes to show us what he's made of, he does. Nice tux, bro.
Yeah, and just the messaging. I read it again. We always turn up early. No, you don't. And 24 hours after the state of emergency has finished, do you remember there was the floods in Auckland? And he was out there helping in the middle of the night. Great, Luxon, because you know why? That was just down the road. I realised the other day, someone said to me, do you know there is one minister in this government from the South Island? There is one. What does that tell us about the South Island and this government? Yeah, exactly. One minister. And to move on to somewhat of the next subject, the tone deaf thing, right? Not really talking about this time, but it leads into the conversation around Dunedin Hospital. Of the tone deafness of the Prime Minister standing in a private hospital while talking about and having an interview about Dunedin Hospital, Dunedin's public hospital, and how the funding was going to be lowered. We're not going to necessarily get into this right now, but I know you mentioned that to me as well, Chewy. Standing in a private hospital in the private health sector, doing a stand-up with the press about cutting funding for a public hospital, Chewy. Tone deaf? I've got quite a bit on this, but you can get in there first. You look like you're chomping.
Oh, look, absolutely. When I saw that story at the end of last week, that he was talking about Dunedin Hospital, he's finally talking about the massive protests that we had here at Dunedin about Luxon going back on the words that he said all the way back 2 months ago about us getting the full noise hospital, and even further back from that, there was an election promise and all of that sort of stuff, that he would dare speak about it while he's opening a new wing in a private hospital.
Yeah.
We have spoken about this before. Luxon has a terrible sense for optics. He has a terrible sense for political capital. And more to the point, he's either surrounded by people that don't see it as well and don't go, hey, boss, maybe we should do this media stand-up, I don't know, in the car park of the Burger King outside.
Yeah.
They either don't see it either, or he doesn't listen to them. Either way, it's not good.
Or there is a third option, is that they see it, but they don't say anything to him because he's the boss. He may have surrounded himself with yes men. I mean, it must be one of the hardest or worst jobs in the country to be on his maybe PR team or maybe his social media team. They can make him do silly little TikToks where he sticks his tongue out like a 13-year-old girl, but actually thinking about the optics of something and the tone-deaf nature of what you're telling people in Dunedin. And if we're talking about ferries, people in the whole country, it'd be like going to a private yacht boat seller and talking about how we're going to not fund the ferries as much as we would. I mean, that'd be tone-deaf. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
The other part of this is this weekend there's been a flurry of articles about, hey, maybe we need to do public-private partnerships with healthcare. Hey, maybe we let the private sector do this, that, and the other thing. Maybe we just don't have the money to do this. Maybe the government's not the best people to do health. It's been a flurry of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Mountain Tui on various platforms mentioned this. Shane Reddy's up to his eyeballs in his own private healthcare.
Right.
The Health New Zealand Commissioner, Levy, has written many, many articles on how they should privatise healthcare. Christopher Luxon, as of 2 weeks ago, now has $500,000 of liquid assets because he sold those houses.
Yep.
Is he waiting for a new investment opportunity?
Well, and just remember, the reason he was able to do that with those houses is they changed the bright line test from whatever it was, 10 years to 4 years. So if you haven't seen the appearance of a conflict of interest before, or a conflict of interest that is the leader of a party changing a law that then enables you months later to get $500,000 tax-free. I mean, how can that be anything but? How can that be anything but? But let's not move too much away from the hospital, so because we're still here.
Yeah. So I mean this is the whole thing is that it is optics. It is that 1-2 punch from central government for Dunedin. Fuck you, you're not getting a hospital. And yeah, we don't know what your council's asked for. It's in a pile of papers somewhere. None of us have read it.
But they declined it.
Yeah,
didn't read it, but declined it.
I'm the Prime Minister. The buck stops with me. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Mark, do you know? I don't know either. I had a cheese roll down. It's great. It's just you make the comparison. There's been this mentioned in the chat. Chewy, would you rather have the PM turn up and take away from the response? No, because that's not the question. Like I said, we've got examples of crisis management from previous governments, not even the last government, from other governments, of leaders turning up. Like when Chippy turned up in Auckland when they had the cyclone.
Yeah. Do you know what this is, though? Sorry, I'm interrupting. But I can tell you what this is. I know exactly where this question's come from. It's come from someone following American politics. Because what's just happened with the hurricane in America is that there was a lot of people criticizing Biden and Kamala Harris for not turning up, but they got told to stay away because it's a different vibe. Secret Service comes in. It actually makes a drain on local police officers. And that's where this is coming from, because the PM doesn't turn up and take away from the response in New Zealand. The PM turns up and actually adds to the focus on the thing. We're not America. You don't all of a sudden have to lose half your police force because the Prime Minister's turning up. I guarantee you this question here below us right now has come from someone who's heard this conversation about the right blaming Kamala Harris and Biden for not turning up, and then Biden and Kamala Harris explaining, and also all the governors and sheriffs saying they said they'd come when we were ready. That's where this conversation's come from. And you know why? Because who's ever heard this question ever before and when there's been a New Zealand emergency? Never once. But it's just happened 2 weeks ago in America.
I am not even suggesting that what we wanted was Christopher Luxon to fucking turn up in the middle of a storm and start filling in sandbags, although that would have been amazing political capital for him if he decided to. My point here is that post of his could have been, I'm keeping a really close eye on what's going on down in Dunedin. Seems to be a really concerning situation, and whatever local government needs from central government, we're here. Not we're off to the ball. You know,
Yeah.
it's that tonal shift. And the point that I want to make from that is Christopher Luxon is bad at this. He is bad at being a politician. He is bad at seeing when there is an opportunity for political capital. There is an opportunity to be seen as a true leader. And every time he gets one of those opportunities, he misses it and flubs it super, super hard. I appreciate that might be hard to hear. Maybe you voted for him. But let's be honest, there's a better way that he could have done this.
Very, very few people voted for Christopher Luxon. If anything, they voted against Labor. But let me just say, you've just reminded me of something. I've got something to show you before. I'll do it at the end of this bit now. And if you don't laugh, I'm never going to do another show again. And it's to do with Christopher Luxon. So we'll get to it as long as I can open up my messages. Right, let's just keep going because this is about the actual Dunedin Hospital as well. So this is from the stand-up. I'm not going to the TVNZ or the Stuff News stories. I'm showing you footage from the stand-up because it wasn't all shown. The hospital protesters were out in force today, and they were wanting Mr. Luxon to keep their promise. Now, I'm getting really, 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 really frustrated with mainstream media, and I'll explain why in a minute. So this is the Prime Minister now speaking to media in Dunedin about the protesters, basically turning up and say, what are you doing with our hospital? We want our hospital.
You're with some protesters at the airport and other places around town today. What do you say to them, and what do you make of their, obviously they're calling for something to be done in regards to keeping promise of building the hospital as is.
Yeah.
What have you taken from that?
Look, I fully understand the frustration. It's also frustrating for a government that's been in power for 10 months inheriting this mess as well. But we are going to build a great hospital here in Dunedin, but it's going to be at 1.9 billion, not approaching 3 billion. And as a result, that's the work that will go on from here. This is a project that started at 1.2, went to 1.6. We've put another 300 million in to bring it up to 1.9. We're not building the most expensive hospital in the Southern Hemisphere at 3 billion New Zealand dollars. And we're going to build a great hospital for $2 billion. So there's an urgent review, as you understand, with a couple of options that are going to be considered. And the reason is it's important that we do deliver within our budgets. We've had a series and inherited a series of cost creeps and scope creeps, whether it's been on ferries, whether it's been on school buildings, and now we see in hospitals as well. And we want to be able to do that because we also have other regional hospitals. We have regional hospitals across the country of smaller scope and scale that actually rely on that infrastructure money, whether you're in Whangarei or Palmerston North or Nelson or Tauranga for that matter.
Okay, so I want to address quite a few things in this conversation, right? The first is, when your number one priority is budget above all else, you're going to build a shit product. Because when he says we don't need $3 billion, it was like there are 500 health experts that have said this is what you need. If it adds up to $3 billion, then that's actually exactly what's needed to build that hospital. So coming out of the back, when you, I mean, yes, budget has to be a part of it. But when budget is number one, you're always going to lose. You're always going to lose when building infrastructure. Here's the second thing, and I'm ropeable with the mainstream media. I've said this before, and when I say this, it's not like I'm not going, oh, poor us. It's actually you guys get the access, and you fucking watch, I know, and you don't do your jobs. Okay, Mr. Luxon, we are not going to build the most expensive hospital in the Southern Hemisphere for $3 billion. One Google search, one fucking Google search. Adelaide's Women's and Children's Hospital, New Zealand, $3.5 billion. Like, I stopped investigating because, Luxon, we're not going to build the Southern Hemisphere's most expensive hospital at $3 billion. One Google search finds another hospital, unless Adelaide's no longer in the Southern Hemisphere, that costs more. Have we heard anyone with access go, excuse me, Mr. Luxon, that's bullshit? Can we address the you've got something brown on your chin because you're talking shit. We can see it. It's on your chin. No one. So then I started to think, why is this guy so determined to focus on the Southern Hemisphere? Let's say he's right, Chewy. Let's say that there wasn't one Google search which proved him wrong. Let's say he's right. Why would the Southern Hemisphere matter? Why? Is it because possibly countries that are similar sizes to us spend far more than $3 billion? Let's have a look at Ireland, for example. Ireland is almost exactly the same population as New Zealand. Almost exactly the same. In fact, when one person leaves here, one person leaves there. It's almost exactly the same. Ireland, the hospital they're building at the moment, 4.4 billion New Zealand dollars, Chewy. 4.4 billion New Zealand dollars. So it's not the most expensive hospital build in the Southern Hemisphere. And looking at other countries of a similar size to us, they're spending more. Now, what happened today, Chewy, is the National Party bootlickers came out and started going, Dunedin, 135,000 people, Adelaide, 1.3 million. No. That's not what Luxon said. He didn't say we're not going to build the most expensive hospital in the Southern Hemisphere per capita. He didn't say that, so you can't play that game. He said, carte blanche, we are not going to build the most expensive hospital in the Southern Hemisphere. Those are the words. That is the metric he has put out there. That is the metric we are measuring him by. Other than, Chewy, even if it was the most expensive hospital build in the Southern Hemisphere, if it's what the region needs for the next 100 years, it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. It's a deviation away from the point to try and say to all his voters, look how these people want us to waste your tax dollars. By the way, landlords, here's $3 billion. By the way, top 1%, here's $14 billion of tax breaks. I'm fucking furious about this whole thing, and I've got more to go, so you better go now.
Yeah, look, what we saw on his visit today is definitely the new talking point. We're not spending $3 billion, a number that has heavily been pushed back on. Yeah. And heavily disproved because they've padded it with a whole bunch of shit that's not in the scope of the new hospital anyway. And we're not going to spend the most of a hospital in the Southern Hemisphere, which you have just disproved for them there as well.
One Google search.
You're going to get an excellent hospital for $2 billion. Now,
that's not for the purpose. That clinicians haven't said this is what we need. Clinicians have told us what we need. This is what's fit for purpose. Oh, okay. You know what, Joe? I was going to buy a car, and the car that I needed was to go up a really steep hill, and I needed a four-wheel drive. Unfortunately, the four-wheel drive car was $3,000 more than the budget I had. So I bought a two-wheel car. So I got a good two-wheel car, but guess what? It didn't fucking climb up the hill. It wasn't fit for purpose. Sorry.
So this is the question that I want the media to ask whenever that gets trotted out. 1.9 billion, 2 billion, whatever he's going to say, you can get a great hospital for $2 billion. I want to know, is it going to have more beds than we have now? Is it going to have more operating theatres than we have now? Is it going to have the scanners that we were promised? Is it going to be built all at once? Or is this going to be a phased development which will only push up the price?
Yep.
These are the details we need to know. Is this still going to be a premier teaching hospital to train potentially generations of future doctors? Is this a hospital that is going to be able to service the lower half of the South Island, or in an emergency, the entirety of the South Island? Is that the planning that we're doing? Or are we just looking at the checkbook and going, fuck, we've already borrowed for landlords. We don't want to dip into the kitty again. This is a manufactured crisis because these guys want to privatize by bit by bit. They're not going to do it all at once. They're just going to open the door a little bit. Open the door a little bit. These guys have a conflict of interest. They are heavily compromised when it comes to this because of the things that...
Oh my gosh, Chewy just got Thanos'd away. What on earth happened there? Unless I've been Thanos'd away. Oh, here he comes. Was it Thanos? It was Thanos.
Yeah, they're heavily compromised. They're invested in the thing that they are supposed to be doing. They do not have us in mind. They have their portfolios and they have their legacies in mind.
Okay, we're gonna keep going. That was very funny. There's 2 more clips. I'm going to play them back to back, Joey, or else we'll never get to the end of this. Another clip here from the stand-up where he's basically been asked, "Can you deliver what you promised?" And another talking point, right? And we've done this so much with the inner city rail link for Auckland and stuff. When they say nothing happened in the previous term, really? Okay, we'll have a look at that. So here's another question, and it's all about delivering what you promised. Hospital.
Promise of 35,000 people turned out to protest the cuts to the Dunedin Hospital. Are you confident you can deliver what was promised within a $1.9 billion package?
Yeah, look, I get the frustration, how frustrated you think I feel. I've been leading a government for 10 months. The previous administration had...
And the bloody media keeps asking me these kinds of questions. But that's not how it's supposed to work. I was a CEO. No one ever questioned me.
The previous administration had 6 years to get this done and nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
Consequence. So the bottom line is we are going to build things in this country. You've seen us announce our fast-track legislation yesterday. We are over it. We need to get things moving. We need to get things built. We need to get things started. So for $1.9 billion, we're going to build a good hospital down here in the south. Don't worry about that. But you do not...
We are worried about that. And actually, every taxpayer should be worried about that, you building a not fit for purpose one, and then there having to be upgrades and add-ons in 10 years from now. We're worried about it.
We do not need $3 billion and a massive cost overrun, which means we can't then support other infrastructure that we desperately need in healthcare across other regional centres.
So we don't need $3 billion. Again, if 500 clinicians have turned on to what we need, and if what we need by the experts reaches $3 billion, then we do. Sorry, just because you want to have a budget and you're like, we don't need that for a hospital. We don't need it for a hospital, but for this hospital, if that's what the clinicians have said and that's the total, then yes, we do. Okay, nothing's happened. I'm really tired about this from this talking point government as well. Nothing's happened, right? And like we've said before, when you're building a house, the first year of the section, it looks like nothing's happening. But what's happening in the background is surveys are doing their thing, architects are doing their thing, you're picking and you're choosing. There's lots of work going on contributing to the build. Nothing happened. Like really? Well, 2015, the Ministry of Health appointed Southern Partnership Group to lead hospital redevelopment. It's under national. It released business cases for 2 options, both estimated to be between 1.2 to 1.4 billion. 2017, so this is, if it was mid-year, it would have been national. So it was national Labor changeover, political buy-in. 2018, Labor, site selection. 2019, Labor, drilling and digging. 2020, Labor, demolition works begin. 2021, contracts were negotiated for the next planning and stages design. 2020, you can see it goes on and on and on. So maybe there wasn't a wall erected. But to say nothing happened, it's the same as the inner city rail. Nothing happened. No, actually, lots of things happened. Just because a metre of line hadn't been laid, there was lots of other things happening in that time period to get to the end where then we could start laying lines of rail or building walls of a hospital. And again, media, stop it. If he says it, nothing happened. So what about the drilling and digging in 2019? What? That's something, isn't it? Didn't they need to do that before they built a wall? Yes, so things were happening. Last clip, Joey, and then you can jump back in. And you actually said something really interesting, which you talked about how the delay will increase costs. It's the exact question that comes up here, and Luxon gets a bit pissy. And he almost goes, well, why didn't you talk to Labor about that? Almost. He stops himself, but you can tell it's in his brain. Have a listen.
Why does the government suggest retrofitting the hospital being repeated studies have shown it be more expensive and take more time to do?
Yeah, look, again, all we're doing is we've had a project blowout from 1.2 billion to 3 billion, approaching $3 billion, and as a result, we're doing a very quick, taking urgent advice about whether we do staged at the old facility or scale back at the new facility, new site. We'll look at both those options. We'll come back with a decision very... Sorry?
Wouldn't delay increase the costs?
Sorry, say that again. I missed the question.
Wouldn't delay increase the costs?
Wouldn't delay increase the prices is the question.
Well, again, we're going to move through that process very quickly, but I think if you felt that way so strongly, maybe over the last 6 years,
Oh.
we could have seen a lot more progress. And we didn't. So this is a government that's going to get things done.
He nearly said it. If you felt so strongly over the last 6 years, you could have asked Labor a bit, but he pulled himself back. Didn't quite go there.
We're going to build a great hospital. We've got to do it for 1.9 billion. It'll be then one of the most expensive hospitals in the Southern Hemisphere.
That's it. One of? Oh, okay. What? Did he get a word in his ear between the two? I don't think so.
But we're determined to build a good hospital here, period. But we have to do it within the budget. We cannot be in the situation that we've inherited where we have a $600 million project for ferries that blows out to $3 billion. We have 450 school buildings and projects that end up being underfunded by billions of dollars. We have a hospital here that's blowing out to approaching $3 billion. We'll get it right sized. We'll get it sorted. We'll get good value, and we'll make sure we build a good hospital.
So there you go. Luxon gets a bit pissy about the delaying of costs, but he's completely right. Do you think if we went back to Hyundai today and said, can we have those boats again, it'd be the same price? Of course not. Of course it would not be the same price. There you go, Joey. I rest my case. Your chance to chew it up now.
I saw the figure bandied around that the report that these guys have commissioned cost the taxpayer over $3,500 per page. Like
Wow.
all of this stuff has costs, and this is one of the things. Like, this is why projects always get scaled down, right? They come through. What do you need? Cool. Where are we going to do it? This is what it looks like. I don't know if we're going to get away with that. We'll scale it back, scale it back, scale it back, scale it back. Like, these guys, they probably want to cut the remit on a new hospital. Maybe if we scale it back, it'll get done quicker. But the fact is that they're going back over their own words and their own planning. Retrofitting the old hospital was ruled out really early because it is leaking. The building is at the end of its useful life 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I read a story today of they were operating on a dude, and brown water started coming out of the roof, and they had to basically throw a sheet over him and move him to another theatre halfway through operating on him. What the fuck are we doing? He wants to play games of, no, we're going to blame the other guys, and Dunedin's being greedy. If they get everything that they want, then Nelson doesn't get a hospital. They want to play us off against each other. Nobody has ever complained, wow, this hospital cost a lot of money, but God, it's lasted us decades and decades and decades. My son was born there and my grandkid was born there, and it was been so good. My friend's wife gave birth there. Across the hall there was a room that was barricaded off for asbestos contamination. For fuck's sake, has he stepped foot in that hospital? Has he gone to talk to the people that have to work in it? I would say no. Like 35,000 people marched for this, and he just seems to want to brush it away and go, oh, I'm just as frustrated as you guys. No, you fucking aren't.
No,
you don't live here. You won't use this hospital. You're not on a waiting list for anything. You don't have a friend or family member in here. You're not as frustrated as the rest of us. Don't piss in my cornflakes and tell me it's milk. It's fucking bullshit.
Hey, one other thing, Joey. He said in that clip as well, 1.9 will still be one of the most expensive hospitals. I've done the research today, right? And like I said, I stopped once the first result I found deflated his most expensive. But I did notice and quickly read through one. There's currently $9 billion being spent in South Africa on, I think it's 5 hospitals. It's like a conglomeration of 5 different hospitals, 9 billion. And I mean, I know that doesn't average 1.9 billion per, but they're putting $9 billion into multiple hospitals as we speak because they needed to be upgraded. So, he hasn't done the numbers. He doesn't know.
What do you think provides more to the people of this country? A brand new hospital that will suit an entire region of this country for decades to come, that will train teachers and nurses for all of the other hospitals for decades to come.
Yep.
Or we can pad landlords' profit and loss statements. Because that was good enough to borrow billions of dollars for. So that's not something that had to be downscaled. That was an election promise. And they can't go back on their promises. The hospital as planned was an election promise. And they have gone back on that, but they didn't go back on tax cuts for landlords. We'll keep banging this fucking drum until everybody loses their fucking mind, because it is the most direct A to B comparison that anybody can make here. Why did we borrow money to give it to landlords as a tax cut? Why? What did that produce for this country?